All right, and welcome everyone to the Ginette Biro podcast. I'm Ginette Biro, and I am so thrilled to be joined by this beautiful woman, Nance. she goes by Nancy. She goes by Nance. I call her Nance, and she is a recovery coach. And we were talking about what that really means, and she is really about helping people recover their joy. And holy smokes, is that ever important right now? Like, yeah, and I can't wait to dive into this. But first of all, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's such a beautiful day. I mean, the sun is shining. It's a great day to be here. I mean, here, there,
yeah,
wherever we are.
Yes, right? Exactly.
I am here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, you are. So you have quite the spiritual journey, and I'll call it a spiritual journey, but it's a life journey as we're all on. But you have really lived and crawled through the muck to get back to the joy that you share. And I got to say, before we go into your story, because your story is so significant, I find your posts, Nancy does these daily posts of whatever's going on in your world every day. And you share it and you share the joy of it. You can see the joy, but you also share the reality of it. You go right into it, but you always bring it back to what you can be grateful for. And I find that really interesting because you're very upfront with your journey, but you always like wrap it in gratitude all the time.
It's a practice that I start off every day with. I've got a gratitude partner and boom, 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 boom. The text comes early in the morning. And then throughout the day, either I respond or I live the response. Sometimes I try to stay away from the phone and just be, because we can get so trapped into the triggers of what we use to escape from. Yeah. And we want to escape from pain. That's what our life is. It's an escape from pain, because we've all gone through trauma. We've all gone through tragedy in one way, shape, or form. Right. And that's what, when I talk about the grief process, I don't just talk about the loss of a child, the loss of a grandchild. I talk about the loss of the marriage, the loss of the finances. I mean, so many of us have gone through that in the last year, that terrible pang of, what do you mean I don't have a job? You want me to work from home? I don't have a computer. You know, it's so mass right now, the change element. It's overwhelming. It's truly overwhelming for many of us. And as soon as we think that the sun's out and everything's wonderful, it's like smack. And it's how you land on your feet that matters. Yeah.
And so let's talk about this, because for those of you that don't know, they're listening to you talk about, gratitude and all this. And they're like, yeah, but, I'm just surmising here, but I'm sure there's some people that are like, well, I don't know if she's been through what I've been through, but let's talk about your story and why you are such an advocate for this, because of what you've been through. So let's dive into that.
Well, it started even before Emily passed away. So when I was 10 years old, the number 10 is very, very important in my life. So when I was 10 years old, my mom had an AV malformation. So that's an amalgamation of blood clots. Hers was the size of a peach. So imagine that. And it burst when I was at summer camp. I was at summer camp and Mom was going to pick me up and we were going to Disneyland.
Oh, wow.
And that changed. That completely changed. She was given a 10% chance of surviving and a 0% chance of recovery. And here she is, still alive. And I watched her recover from paralysis on the right side of her body. She had to learn how to walk, how to talk, how to speak. She went from using two hands, being a secretary for the city of Edmonton, to going into the accounting department because she had the use of one hand. I grew up watching tenacity. And I also grew up being betrayed as a child without a parent. it was something that I was just used to. And as an only child, I didn't have anybody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to what I thought everybody talked to, right? That imaginary best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I held on to that very, very strong until I got into trouble for eavesdropping and listening to conversations. And I wasn't listening to conversations outside of the fact that I just heard what was going on in the other room because
Mm-hmm.
they were telling me.
Right.
And tuned that out and continued my journey into the wonderful world of adolescence. Oh boy, fitting in was always a challenge for me because I was different. Mm-hmm. So I started doing what many people do. Teenage, I started smoking marijuana. Mm-hmm. And it became a wonderful, wonderful escape. Mm-hmm. And then it became something that damaged my life in so many ways. And I started making bad decisions. I mean, marriage number one. And it wasn't a bad marriage. It was something that I had done to escape home. I wanted to get away from my mom. So I married a guy that was older than me, mm-hmm. a guy who didn't have the ability to love me because he was damaged. Mm-hmm. So that lasted for 9 months. And during that 9 months, I lost twins. I was pregnant with twins and I lost them. Mm-hmm. So the tragedy began at such a young age, and it just continued. So when that marriage ended and I started playing ball, I met my second husband, and off I went into, what we do. We start dating that guy that looks great on the outside. Mm-hmm. And then I got pregnant.
Right.
And I mean, along came child number one, my son. And it was wonderful. I loved being a mom, mm-hmm. but I was married to an addict. And in order to join in the game, I became an addict, another level of addict. Mm-hmm. I became addicted to cocaine and then crack. I mean, it sounds like nothing, but wow. I mean, looking back on it now, wow, I was mm-hmm. just anesthetizing. I wanted the pain to go away. I wanted to be able to, live the life. And along came son number two. We named him Chance. Our last chance for a girl. And he was actually named after the dog from Homeward Bound.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
So I named my son after a dog. Yeah. And then I wanted another child. So I decided I wanted a girl. And I had met up with a stranger who told me how to have a girl. And then another stranger who told me how to have a girl. So on the 10th day of my menstrual cycle, I birthed my daughter. Or I conceived my daughter. Yeah. 10 days later, I found out I was pregnant in a dentist chair, throwing up in a mask.
Right. Oh.
And away we go. Along came Emily. And we lived 10 amazing years with her. She was my best friend. We did everything together. And the plan was that when she went to college, I was going to go to college with her. And then I was going to end my marriage. And then everything changed when she died. Emily passed away in 2011 on a Sea-Doo. She was driving a Sea-Doo with her brother, and a boat swerved to miss another Sea-Doo, and she died on impact. And Jarrett was damaged physically. His shoulder was torn open. His knee was smashed. Mass concussion.
Jarrett's your other son, right?
Jarrett's my oldest son.
Your oldest son.
And they were just driving, simply coming back. Mm-hmm. Nothing out of the ordinary. And because the sun was going down and the vision was obscured, it happened. And I went through a tremendous amount of anger. Mm-hmm. I was beyond angry. I remember I went to see a psychiatrist. My ex-husband had arranged that for me because he figured that I was depressed, and I was, but I denied it. And when the psychiatrist asked me, she said, so have you ever suicidal tendencies? And I said, no, I'm more homicidal than suicidal. Mm-hmm. And she, can you please explain that?
Yeah, right.
And so I told her exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
And she said, and have you acted on any of that? And I said, I've written a lot down as to how to do it, but nah.
Yeah.
Then we decided to discuss what I did want to do with my life. And I became a yoga teacher.
Oh, wow.
That was where my healing began.
Okay. When you started deciding what you wanted instead of what wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Would you say like you started to focus on what you could control and what would better yourself? And
I had to.
Would you say that was a real conscious thought, or was it a series of events that happened that retrospectively?
Oh God, series of events.
Yeah.
Everybody else was going on with their life.
Mm.
Her father was going on with his life and a new relationship. Our marriage ended. The words, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And honestly, my only thought was, well, no shit. Our marriage was over a long time before that, but I was never a quitter. So I honored my wedding vows very, very strongly. And Emily always said, quitters never win and winners never quit. And I taught her that. And then she loved to use that against me.
Right.
Like children often do. They give us our words back.
Right.
I'd be like, I quit. That's it. She's like, quitters never win and winners never quit. Like, yeah. So our children are our greatest gift. And so as everyone else was going on with their life, I didn't know how. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I knew how to take care of everybody else. Codependency 101. I graduated with honors. Yeah, I really did.
Wow. That's such a journey. And so your most traumatizing situation became your greatest launching point to the journey that you're on now of like self-love and gratitude and healing.
Absolutely.
Of all of the things. So Emily was really your trigger point of going all the way to the beginning, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I had to learn how to erase from my mind the images. I mean, I remember when I worked on releasing the image of her on the pier, her perfect little body, blonde hair laying down, and her head just slightly off the side because her neck was broken. Right. The blood that was everywhere. Being in the hospital with my son, as he kept on saying the same things over and over and over and over again. He repeated 3 phrases. Where's my mom? He wanted to know where his mom was. And he kept on saying, I killed my baby sister. Oh, gosh. I killed my baby sister. And it was so devastating. And I kept on saying to the doctor, can you please give him something for this? And he said, I can't. If I give him any more morphine, he'll go into a morphine-induced coma. So here you are navigating the loss of one child and then the trauma of your other child. And then here you are as the mom in the middle. Yeah, mom in the middle. Your own experience of like, oh my gosh, triggering all your childhood stuff in this moment with both of your children in 2 totally separate experiences. Yeah. And even just one of those would be traumatic enough. Well, and the trauma, when it kicks in, you go into this state of shock. Right. So I was able to remember my father's phone number. I called my dad immediately. And he was living in White Rock at the time, and he made it in record time. My dad used to be a race car driver, man. It was a fast amount of time, and he was right there. And then I called my uncle so that he could call my mom. Because if she heard, she would have a seizure. And I couldn't have that. So I immediately went into, I need help. I'm going to call my dad. And then my mom. I immediately went to both sides. I'm blessed with a very, very dynamic relationship with my parents and a stepmom who loves and adores me, which wasn't exactly the way that I saw it when I was a teenager. And she came along and, interrupted my life. But now she's such a blessing. Yeah. Such a blessing. Yeah. So fast forward to, I think it was 9 or 10 months after Emily passed away, and Jarrett was going to have a child. I was so excited. I was going to be a grandma. And then the next tragedy happened and she passed. Like it was just episode after episode and after episode.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to be a yoga teacher by then. And I was able to help with my granddaughter's birth. And my granddaughter was stillborn, but she still had to go through the birthing process. It was awful.
I can imagine.
And it was all the practices that I've learned that pulled me back, because it's amazing, the triggers. I remember some of the kindest words that were said to me were, "I'm sorry for your loss." And it was like nails on a chalkboard, because you lose a backpack. You lose a backpack and you retrace your steps and you go and get it. And I couldn't retrace my steps. I couldn't get her back.
Yeah.
So I just turned everything off. I was so numb. I didn't know words for feelings. I mean, I used a lot of language to express the feelings, but it was all, you know, it was blue. Let's just say the air was blue. Because how else do you say my life sucks without using the F word?
Yeah. Right.
You know, and it's a beautiful word, but it doesn't help you understand. So I started trying to understand my emotions, starting with, you know, the typical ones: anger, blame, betrayal, abandonment. And then I got angrier.
Yeah, right. Because you brought them up, right? You weren't stifling and squashing them, barely like with them bubbling up. You actually brought them up to see and to feel. And I can imagine that must have been just like a tsunami.
Oh, a complete tsunami.
Yeah.
Complete tsunami. And then to watch my ex-husband get remarried and be all happy. Oh, you know, and then to learn how to bring a relationship into my life was a challenge, because all I knew was what I didn't want. So I wrote it down. I wrote a list of what I didn't want, and it was easy, right? When you don't know when you know what you don't want, it was easy. And it was a big, long list. And then I took the list and wrote what I wanted. And I created a vision board, and I went online dating. And then my son came and looked at my profile before I put it up again, because I'd already failed at online dating once before. And he read it and he said, "Oh my God, Mom, you're going to get a gay yogi." And I'm like, "I am not." He goes, "Oh no, you really are. You need to change that." So I changed it to be more authentic and not so, you know, looking for a soulmate, right? Because I mean, that's just, it's not bang on. It's vague. And I prayed to the Archangel Raphael, because I hated God, and Jesus was on waivers. And Archangel Raphael, the angel of healing. And then I met a guy. Went on a date that lasted for 2.5 hours, and found out that we had a mutual friend. Wanted to call her. Oh my God, that desire to pick up the phone and go, "Hey, can you tell me about the guy?"
Yeah.
But then I didn't want that, because I wanted to truly find out on my own terms if this person resonated with me, not them. And found out, oh gosh, within weeks that his name was not just Ralph, but Raphael. And I'm like, well, maybe, I don't know.
I'm interested.
Right? Like, could it be a sign? You know, could it be a sign? And I almost didn't date him because he had a daughter. It was my girlfriend that picked him, not me. She was going through my profile like friends do, you know, when you go over for coffee and you're all excited. She's like, "Ooh, I like this guy." And I'm like, no, that's the bald guy in the army. And she said, "No, it doesn't say he's in the army." And I'm like, "Well, look at his pictures." I was looking at everything from the basis of what could go wrong. And so she liked his pictures. And then he thought it was me, and I got this "Hey you" on my phone. And here I am 8 years later. Happy. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. We have our ups and our downs, and we were talking about that this morning. The stove broke. Oh, right. Second stove in a month, right? Like, oh my God, retrograding. Mercury, retrograding.
Right. Exactly.
Retrograding.
But like this, so this is like your return to Joy, because as you started shifting all those things, then you started drawing them to you energetically, right? Like energy attracts like energy. And so you drew him into your world when you changed it from within first, when you started the
for sure.
from within.
For sure. And then trusting another person. My goodness, that was a challenge. And trusting that he would accept me. Because I mean, I remember the first time that I walked him through a meditation to help him connect with his guides, his loved ones that had passed, his guardian angels. And I connected him with his grandmother. And it was interesting because I connected him with a person who pushed him on a swing. And I saw a eulogy card in his closet. And so I explained it to him as fast as I could. Get it out as fast as you can. You know, that blab before someone says you're nuts and they run, you know. And then I went into the closet with him and I said, okay, it's on the 4th shelf to the right, about 10 or 12 cards down. And he opened it up and I'm like, that one. He said, it's my grandma. And I'm like, yeah, well,
yeah, that's who's coming.
I do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can leave now if you want, you know.
There is totally that moment when you're first kind of stepping out with it. I've been there where I'm like, well, actually, can I tell you something? There's blah, 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 right? And then you're like, and sorry. And it's that pause. It's like that slow heartbeat where it's like, doom, doom. And you're waiting. Doom, doom.
Well, and when you do it on the phone, it's even more so because you're like, hello?
Yeah.
Hello, are you still there?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hang up? Because woo-woo is wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's hard to explain.
It is hard to explain. It's true. But do you notice, and I would imagine in the work you're doing, which I want to talk about in a second, but do you notice that there's been quite a shift in about the last 5 years of more people being open to woo, spiritual stuff, meditation, holistic wellness, like non-linear wellness practices?
Absolutely.
I've seen that in my clientele, a big change in the amount of people that are open.
Finding someone that you can relate to when you're going through the experience, I call this person a trusted companion, is exceptionally important. And I've been blessed to be able to work with people who didn't even know I was working with their people. You know, I'd be working with a lady and she'd be like, oh, if my husband would only open up to this. And I'm like, well, you know, people come in their own time. And in my mind, I'm giggling and laughing because I'm like, and your husband's going to be here in 2 hours because he booked a session too. And then months later, when they come out of their own closet and they're like, I went and saw Nance. What do you mean? Well, she did this thing, you know, like you lay on a bed and she moves energy and, you know, he's like, you mean that reflexology? And that, no, what's that? Well, she worked on my feet. She didn't touch my feet, you know, so reiki, reflexology, I do so many different things that, and when I learned that some people want the physical touch, that's when I went on to reflexology. Soul to soul, right?
Yeah. I love that. And that's all a part of, like we said in the beginning, you being a recovery coach, which is what you call yourself, is about helping people recover that joy, which is not just a recovery from drugs or alcohol addictions, not just a recovery from depression or anxiety or a recovery from trauma. It's all or any through the modalities that you offer, which are, like you said, Reiki, reflexology, and your meditations. Where are some of the other places that people can find your offerings?
The YouTube channel has one of my meditations on it. It's from the CD One Spirit in Joy, which again, One Spirit in Joy. I mean, it's amazing. And that was based on Philippians 2:22 or 2:2. When I asked Spirit for a name for the CD, they showed me a Bible verse. And I'm like, oh, come on, right? Like, can't you give me something cool? So I went to the, Google and I'm like, and I'm like, One Spirit in joy. Oh my God, you guys are so cool. Right? I'm going to write that down. And one meaning, one universal consciousness. Yeah. And I call the person that helps us the one great architect, or the great architect of one. Because beautiful. That's what it is. It's an architectural structure that creates life. Yeah. We argue over what the word is, but when you use one great architect, all of a sudden it's like, because I'm very, very linear. Yeah. The Recover Your Joy program is mass. And it's a program, it's a series, and it's because I loved learning and I wanted to grow up and be a teacher. So I created lessons. I created lessons and structure and clickety clicks on the computer, and they usually all click well until they don't.
Right. And here's another thing that I love too, is that like we all understand the meaning of joy and how valuable joy is. And I got to say, on a side note, when I had my NDE and I was on the other side, the words that I could use to best describe the feeling there was bliss and joy. I'm like, it's like bliss and joy. Joy, like you can't understand, like joy. We don't understand joy. And so I love that your whole thing is about recovering joy, but also that joy was Emily's middle name.
Emily's middle name. Yeah. Like, and I walk people through things like their trauma ladder, because it's important to recognize where we've come from and what traumas we've experienced, not to focus on them, but to acknowledge them. Because we stuff them down. We stuff our secrets down. We stuff our lies down. We stuff all those things down. And then we carry them around in a suitcase. I mean, have you ever tried to travel? Where I used to actually do this, where I tried to bring almost everything with me on vacation. And God bless Ralph, because he would give me half of his suitcase, and then I use the other suitcase, and I would literally take 2 full suitcases and a carry-on and a backpack, and I'm going on an adventure, and he's like dragging all the suitcases. Right. And now I travel with carry-on, but it took me a long time to let go of my baggage. Yeah. Man, I had lots. Yeah. And I still do.
And you know what? And that's so true, because I think sometimes people think that like, if you're a healer or a channeler or connected to this or that you have no more baggage or no more healing or no more triggers. And that's really not the case, I think. And, I can't say that for all. Maybe there are some, but I would say the majority, if you're living a human life, you are living through the experience of triggers, traumas, joys, pitfalls. I
still suffer at the startle response. I still suffer with the startle response, not as much. Like if I'm in deep thought and the phone ding ding, right? Like we all have it to a certain degree. But mine used to be so strong that sirens, if I heard a siren or I saw flashing lights, I would grab my phone and I would just text my kids, hey, how you doing? And then I'd wait 5 minutes, and then, hello, how you doing? And then I pick up the phone and I call, and I did all of those things for a very long time until I started to hear the sound of the, hi, Mom. And I knew I had to do something so that I wouldn't be that helicopter mom that we can all become, right?
Right. And I mean, understandably so, but it's just so interesting how much you have been able to consciously choose to transmute over time. And that's why I just think your story is so valuable to share with people, because everybody has a story to varying degrees, and yours is quite a big story. But to go from where you've been and what you've experienced to what you're doing and how you choose to be each day, like I said in the beginning, you always find the bright side of something. Every time you put a post up, no matter what it is, you're like, but this and this and this, or I'm grateful for, and oftentimes you got your coffee, you're like, I'm grateful for a warm hot coffee. Here it is, and
nevertheless, I am willing, right? Nevertheless, I am willing, even though my life may be filled with, God, right? And I mean, I've gone from having mass financial abundance to what do you mean I'm not getting paid for, you have to pay me. No, I don't. Take me to court. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Right. And then we become whiny little children. Don't want to. No.
Yeah.
And then we have to live with ourselves. And I think that's the part that people often forget. We wake up next to the same person every single day. And it's ourselves, no matter who's in the bed with us. You know, and it's the reality of it. I remember when I first started to connect with Emily, it was through scents. So I started to smell her perfume, and that was Britney Spears' Fantasy. And it was like bubblegum and cotton candy, and it would take my breath away. And I remember the first time that I was at a funeral and someone else smelt it because she was there.
Wow.
And she's like,
got chills.
Oh my gosh, I can smell bubblegum and cotton candy. And I nudged my guy and I'm like, hey, did you hear what so-and-so said? And he's like, what? I'm like, can you tell him what you said? And repeated it. And he's like, oh, that's Emily. I mean, and then I'm like, I have waterfalls, I'm bawling. I'm luckily at a funeral.
Yeah, right. Yeah, where it's totally okay.
I'm having a romantic moment, you know.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Totally inappropriately appropriate. And that's what happens. Healing doesn't happen at the most appropriate time. Yeah. It does not work that way.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story here. I just truly appreciate it. And I think it's really going to inspire a lot of people to just be okay with their story and choose to make the best of their story, like just like you did, just like people do. It's a beautiful offering of you to share. And so I want to highlight too, where can people find you?
Exponential joy. And exponential means multiplication. And when you multiply an emotion, it calibrates. So it's powerful. So that's why shame is the lowest emotion that we can feel. And joy is right up there. It's not the best one, but it's right up there. So exponentialjoy.com.
Beautiful. And you have that same handle on Instagram?
Same one. And Recover Your Joy on Facebook.
Recover Your Joy.
That's a group for anybody that's looking at the daily inspiration. Yeah. And then choosing to go through the program, which is a much more in-depth version.
Beautiful.
But it's fun. It's a fun program. Like it really, truly is. There's moments where it sucks and it's like, I don't want to write down all my trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting it out feels so good. It feels so good. And then finding a way to share it with others, because I encourage people as they work through the Just for Today daily work to share that, to take it a step further and share it with somebody. Because when we can share in our recovery, then we help another person open to recovery. And then we create a recovery revolution and a legacy.
Love that. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you again so much for joining me today and sharing your stories and your insights. I'll post the links below. So for anybody that's wanting to connect, exponentialjoy.com. And for anything else, you guys check out avalonspirit.com, and I'll be back again next week.